So nobody look.
Oh!
I'm trying to get it to start. There we go. I think my laptop's just being really slow. Right, so the idea is just, as it says on the screen, if you can perhaps write your name and where you're coming in from in the chat and just guess the crustacean as it zooms out, and obviously try and get there before the full picture zooms out. So this is the first one. Some of them aren't particularly easy. And feel free to shout out as well if you want to, if you prefer, rather than writing in the chat.
Oh, broadclawed, is it?
It is. Well done. And another thing I should mention, for anybody who didn't see in the emails, it is being recorded, this session. So if anyone doesn't want to be shown or anything like that, you can turn your cameras off or anything like that. You know, feel free to mute yourself and everything. And this is just because other people might want to see it, but they haven't been able to make it to the meeting today. And can everybody hear me all right as well? I haven't really done any audio tests.
Yeah, all good.
Right, sweet. Okay. See what this one is. I'll try and catch up with Ben and see where he's at with technical difficulties.
I'm here. I've sorted it all out. Apologies.
Oh, there you are. Right. Well, we're just going through some of the icebreakers while we wait for more guests. How many we have at the moment? 17. I think we're expecting nearly 25. So we'll see. Anybody know what this species is?
Is that a wart barnacle?
It is.
Yay!
Good work, Freya.
Nice.
Can I jump in on these ones because I haven't seen these ones now?
I don't see why not.
Or maybe I should stay silent and just pretend that I know all of them.
I mean, you've given your plan away now. What study's in?
Oh, that's a Montague's. Oh no, it's a
Maybe you should stay silent, Krista.
In my defense, it was zooming slowly out. I got the right, genus. It didn't get to the crucial ID part that,
That's very much part of the game.
Yeah.
What's the ID part?
Minus points to me, I guess.
And critical ID part's all the hair.
Jamie, do you want to just make it clear to everyone what it is? Because I think with us talking over each other.
It's a Risso's crab. I think Xanthopilipes. I think.
Good.
The next one. I'll just see who have been entering in the chat. That actually stopped the animation.
Yeah, I think you have, mate.
Volcano
Zoom stuff. It is a volcano barnacle. Well done. Now, what do we call that now? Is it perforatus, or something else?
I think so, yeah.
Or perforatus?
Yeah.
We could call the whole thing off.
Potato, tomato.
This one is a favourite of one of our members. I'm surprised I haven't got it already.
The St. Piran's crab.
It is.
Oh,
well done. Is that Smile?
Yeah.
Good work, Smile. Hi, Smile.
Hello.
Hi.
This is my favourite one, I think.
This is a really hard one to get, actually. I did run through it myself, and I was like, oh, that I had to wait till the end, basically. It's an awkward one.
Is it an edible crab?
Oh, pattern.
Oh,
Well
we
done.
got it. Who was that?
That was me.
Oh, of course.
Yes.
Well, Laura.
Well done.
Laura, since you're here, crab expert, I often find that these edible crabs, and some other species as well, have this strange mark right in the centre of the carapace at the back. You can sort of see it a bit in this one. I'm pointing at it, but that doesn't do anybody any favours. Do you know what I mean?
No, do you mean like right at the back of the carapace or in the centre?
Really in the centre of it.
That
Whoops,
kind of
someone's
ridge
ringing.
that they have.
I beg your pardon?
It's like the sort of ridged area.
I'll have to show you another time, and I'll point it out. Sorry,
Circle it on an image and send it in a chat.
I can do that.
Alright. I can't remember how many more of these we have, but I think we'll be good for time. How many more people do we have? Still shy on the numbers, I think, but it might be that some more people haven't been able to make it.
That's a long Claude.
Yeah, it is.
It's Bill here. I just say I had the edible crab at Noton a few days ago.
Alright. Hi, Bill.
Hi.
Right.
Oh, that might be the Palamon elegans.
That is unbelievable.
It's not. It's because when I first started the thing, I had the PowerPoint on display. On that slide.
There's a little bit of insider knowledge there.
Oh, you spoiled the magic there, guys. I was very impressed.
Yeah. And I think that. Oh, who's that talking?
Smile, smile.
Oh, hi, Smile.
Have you already guessed it?
Yeah, Darren got it.
Okay.
Stroke gave it away.
Darren didn't quite get it. He read off the slide.
I think this is the last one. This is probably the worst one to try and guess. Wasn't a particularly good photo when zoomed out. Right, and after this, I think we'll be ready to just crack on. Now everyone's feeling hopefully a bit more loose-lipped and a bit more settled in.
Is it a Montague's barnacle?
It is. Well done.
I think it's actually your picture of a Montague's barnacle cat.
Ah, that'll be the clue.
You know, you could name the exact individual barnacle.
Yes, we have named them all.
Right. So I think that's it for the icebreaker. Basically, welcome everybody to the first of our citizen science forums. We'll be doing these a meeting every month. There'll be more of that, more about that at the end of the presentation. But we just want to basically cover what's been going on with our surveys, get back to you the results of what we found out, and how the verification side of things are going, and some interesting species we found. I think, Ben, you wanted to say some opening lines about the project?
Yes, please. Thank you very much, Jamie, and thank you everybody for joining. It's brilliant to be starting these monthly public sessions. Hopefully, it'll give everyone a chance to get really involved in everything that we're doing with the data after you've been so kind to get out there and collect it for us. So first of all, just a slide to explain, some of you have probably seen this already before, but some of you might be joining for the first time. So this is a slide that kind of explains what we look to achieve with our citizen science. So we look to get people involved in the project who've got a general interest in nature and get them involved in doing the surveys. And we'll be talking mainly on these sessions about the crustacean biodiversity surveys that we do on a monthly basis. Next one, please, Jamie. And that you guys will then submit that, and the data will come through to us. And on monthly or 2 monthly basis is what we're working on now. We'll try and analyse the data. And at the moment, we are working towards two things, really. We're looking to see how the tide is affecting the data and how the individuals who collect the data influence the results we get, which they're not our main points of interest, but they're things that we need to sort of factor out. And so everything that we're doing at the moment in terms of how we're directing you to collect surveys is to help us out with that. And then we look to feedback, and that's what we're trying to achieve here today. When you submit a survey, you'll get a survey report saying everything that you've found, not just for that survey, but throughout your time with the Rockpool project. We'll be looking to revise them at some point this year, and we'll be looking to chat to you. It will actually be every 2 months we do these citizen science forums. So we'll be doing a public session every month. Every 2 months we do a citizen science forum, and then in between we'll have guest speakers, and we have a guest speaker lined up for May that I'll be telling you all about at the end of the session today.
So,
next slide, please, Jamie.
Go, Ben.
So for those of you who are unfamiliar with our biodiversity surveys, they are time searches, which means that you search for a defined period of time in a specific area. So what slide have we got here? Gilly North, okay, so we have these areas marked out that you have to spend a certain amount of time looking for a certain list of species. Okay, we've been doing this I think since we started in 2019, definitely in 2020 we started to collect data on a serious basis. And then back a bit, please, Jamie, come on.
This isn't me doing that.
Is it not? All right, sorry to accuse you falsely. It must be set up to do that automatically. I'm sorry. So yeah, the purpose of it, of doing it this way, is to provide data that we can use, we can analyse to find patterns of biodiversity. So things like which sites have the most species, which sites have the fewest species, which sites have unique species, which sites are similar to each other, that kind of stuff. But we also want to keep the fun in wildlife discovery and fun in rock pooling, which is what gets everybody involved in this kind of stuff in the first place. So it's a bit of a balancing act and trying to tick both of those boxes. When we first started, we had 20-minute surveys and there were quite small taxonomic groups. We have what we call true crabs, which are crabs with four pairs of walking limbs. So classic crabs like edible crabs, shore crabs, velvet swimmers. And then we also have false crabs. So those are porcelain crabs. We saw some of them at the beginning, and hermit crabs, squat lobsters as well. And then the next group was anemones. So they're quite small groups, and the idea for these are ones that even if you've never been rock pooling before, you can pick up one of these surveys and do them, which was great. We still do these within our ecotourism rock pool safaris for people that are brand new to rock pooling. But in terms of long-term appeal, and also in terms of the usefulness of the data, because they are such a small number of species that we survey, they're not ideal. And so last year, with the help of Christoph Patterson here, who had an internship with us last summer, and he's been involved in the project since it pretty much began, we set up the crustacean biodiversity survey. So I think that's the next slide, please, Jamie.
Yep. There you go.
Okay. No, it's not. So I don't know what I'm talking about here. Just a bit further information about all the surveys are the same. There we go. It's coming up. In terms of this is so smooth, isn't it? All right, we'll move on to the crustacean biodiversity surveys. The idea of these is that they are supposed to be challenging. Okay, so they're a bigger taxonomic group, which means that we are able to pick out biodiversity patterns a lot more clearly, but they're not necessarily so easy to just pick up and go with. And the crustaceans are quite a diverse group in terms of their shapes and sizes. And there are some groups like the crabs, which are quite familiar to us. Some groups like barnacles, which we see a lot, but a little bit tricky to ID. And then you get groups like arthropods that really only Jamie here, as far as I know, can ID with any kind of confidence. So, so the idea is that you just get out there and you learn on the job, so to speak, and get better at them as you do them. And that will influence the data that we collect, of course, but that's something that we're looking at as we collect data across the first year. And these are longer, they're 45 minutes, and that was the focus of Christoph's internship last year, to work out what was the best amount of time, both in terms of to get good data, but also to keep people's interest in the survey. And people like doing them for 45 minutes, and it gave us good data. So that's why we've been doing that ever since. We do them on a monthly basis. Have I got another slide, Jamie?
You do.
Thank you. There we are. And we've been doing that ever since last summer. So I think we started our monthly survey periods last August. We've been doing them ever since then to varying extents based on what we're allowed to do with COVID. And they roughly coincide with the new moon. So we've got our next survey period starting tomorrow, and it runs for a full week and a day through to next Friday. So I would urge every single one of you to get out there and do a crustacean survey during this time. And we'll be talking about how you can do that if you're not familiar with these at the end of the session. So thank you very much, Jeremy.
That's right. Yeah, the more surveys, the better, of course. Next, we have, I think, Simon would like to speak a bit about one of the interesting crustacean species we've recently found in our surveys.
Yeah, that's me. Hi, everyone. So I was set to find out about the crabhacker barnacle because I think we've got the first sightings of him in the crustacean surveys. So I did not know what sort of a rabbit hole I was going to end up going down, and it took me. This is a fascinating little creature. So obviously, like most barnacles and most crustaceans, it has a planktonic larval phase, and so only the female ever matures into the adult, and she basically hunts down a little crab, and then once she's found one, she goes to the next life cycle called a kendragon, and from there she drills a little hole in the crab, and basically moves into the crab's body cavities. So she's a parasite who completely takes over the host. So the easy way to find one is this yellow brownish sac underneath the abdomen, and that's the only external part of the barnacle. For the rest of it, she lives inside the barnacle and extends tendrils through to its brain, through its intestines, and through its nervous system. And by doing so, she influences the behavior of the crab, but also the physiology. So quite amazingly, she turns male crabs female and renders female crabs infertile, and basically takes over their whole reproductive system for her own purposes. And so she lives in there. Here you've got a diagram of her sort of inserting herself. It's crazy. It's kind of like when a butterfly is when it pupates, it turns into embryonic cells within the chrysalis. And so the barnacle basically does that, and then injects herself into the tissues of the crab through the antenna that she attached herself to the crab with. It's possible for crabs to have multiple infections from the barnacle, and most females end up with two males just permanently attached to them, and that's their only purpose is to fertilize her eggs.
Rockpool thing.
So, yeah, Sacculina carcini, the crabhacker barnacle, is a vicious little beast.
Thank you for that, Simon. Did someone mention something, a question?
We have a question from Sally.
So, yeah, if anyone has any questions.
Yeah, so the question from Sal is, does she target any particular species of crab?
Yeah, so mostly Carcinus maenas, the shore crab, but other swimming crabs are affected. I think there's other similar species, but this is the one that you find in the UK.
That's cool. And I read in the stuff that you put together. By the way, I don't know if you mentioned earlier whilst I was disconnected, Jamie, but everything we're covering today is going to be in our reports, and we'll be publishing that tomorrow. So Simon's report on the crabhacker barnacle will be in there. And then you mentioned that the crab can actually live for over a year after it's been infected. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, so it can no longer molt because molting would obviously shed parasites pretty effectively. It no longer molts and it doesn't bury itself in the sediment very much anymore. So even the males start doing female behaviors to like climb on top of rocks and spread their eggs around. But yeah, they live quite happily within the crab.
I think that's quite common with parasites. They try to keep the host alive for an optimal amount of time to allow for either maximal growth in the case of parasitoid wasps, or in, I suppose, other parasites just to allow for a greater amount of breeding. The more time they're in their host, the more they can exploit it for reproduction and that kind of thing. So it tends to be that they will attack the most vital things last.
And so, Simon, are they, for that a year or more, are the barnacles reproducing all that time, is it? Or is it just reproduced once?
I think it's once, after about 6 weeks of being in the host, it begins to reproduce, and it produces hundreds of eggs every week. So it's just constantly spreading itself around.
Cool. Well, good one to look out for, because thinking about it now, I'm quite surprised it's taken this long for the first one to come up in the crustacean surveys. So, and I know that people often just assume it is crab eggs that the females got there, but the crab eggs will be quite obviously numerous tiny spherical eggs, and these are just blobs, aren't they?
Yeah, so that's the fleshy, that's the externa, it's called.
Okay.
Basically a big egg sac.
Any more questions regarding the crabhacker?
We do have a question from Nicola. Would this put predators off eating the shore crab?
I'm not sure. I didn't find any research saying that, but I'm not sure they would see it because it's on the underside. It certainly puts humans off eating them.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I haven't got a huge amount of detail to add on this, but I do know, because I did some field work in the fields in Norway about 10 years ago, something like that. There were sharks living in, really deep in these fields, like about 1,000 meters deep. And there was a barnacle that infected those sharks in exactly the same kind of way, basically. So there are obviously a few parasitic barnacles out there.
That's a very interesting species. If there are no more questions, I think the next thing would be, Christoph, if you'd like to talk about your biodiversity analysis.
Cool. Yeah, great. Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yep.
Sorry if everyone saw me squirming for about 5 minutes. A spider came out from underneath my laptop. So
oh, nice.
Chase it around my desk, and then I got a cup, but the cup was too shallow, so it was like clambering up and out of the thing while I was trying to stay still. And they're pretty closely related to crustaceans, so maybe that's the crustaceans coming along and trying to engage.
That's your dream come true, Jamie.
Yeah, I wish spiders came out of my laptop. It's so easy to catch them.
I will gladly trade, if I'm honest.
Send a photo to me if you like.
I will do. I think it's just a garden spider, but I'm not an expert, so I will send it your way, and you can let me know.
Thank you. You have control of the slides, right? So you can cover your own.
Can I go next? Not that I'm aware of. Clicking, nothing appears to be happening.
All right, I'll do it. That's fine.
You should go back to the previous slide then. That's okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Sorry, I was going to say thanks for coming, everyone. I'm just going to do basically a broad overview of the surveys of the last 12 months, and then go into some sort of bit more specific detail about some analysis that I've done just for this month. So every single month we do a broad overview of everything we found this month and then how that relates to everything else, but then also explore a small bit of the data, looking for patterns or bit interesting nuggets of information. So we'll start just with the broad overall picture, which should be the next slide, please, Jamie. Cool. So today we've got 805 records of 40 different unique species. That's pretty great from from a year ago, when we started out. As you can see, these are all different species we found, and they are gradually decreasing in frequency. So we've got Carcini montagu, which is the Montagu's barnacle, followed by the shore crab. They are pretty much evenly found across all different surveys, going all the way down to these very few species which we only have single records of. And as you can see, you kind of get this curve that we expect that, as you tend to find a few species that you find a lot of, and then as you find more and more species, they gradually decrease in frequency to finding the most rare species, which is again what we're finding. Could I have the next slide, please? The exciting thing is that during this time window, we did add 2 new species. So on the next slide, I'll show you why that's kind of interesting. Oh, sorry, go back to, I said I will show you, John.
So I get 2.
It's all right, it's fine. You're just enthusiastic.
That's it.
So the 2 new species that have come out this survey time period are Sacculina carcina. That's the crab hacker barnacle, we've spoken about previously. The other new species is, I'm going to butcher this name, but it is Urulus cranchi. Do you know how to say that, Ben? Have you looked into that?
I've not heard anyone else say it ever. No. You're the first person, and I don't think you really performed that admirably.
Just say along with everyone agreeing with me.
I think you got it though. Urulus cranchi.
Yeah.
Urulus cranchi, yeah.
I mean, this is a species of shrimp. It is rare enough that, as you can say, none of us actually know how to pronounce its name. So we are getting to some really interesting rare species that are exciting because they're new to people who go rock pooling, almost all the time. Do you know any facts about it, Ben? I couldn't find anything. The Wikipedia page is just a single line that says this is a shrimp that exists.
There wasn't much in the guidebook either, except for that I think they are quite widespread. They're small, very small, and so it could easily be one that's overlooked quite a lot. I think that's all I know.
They're in colour quite a bit. That one looks quite colourful, so I'm curious if that's what they look like all the time, or if there's some variability in there.
All I can say on that is I think it was consistent with some of the other pictures I found online. They're guaranteed to vary in colour a little bit. They're quite closely related to the chameleon prawn, so they don't vary like they do. That's for sure.
Okay. For anyone who doesn't know, there's a species called the chameleon prawn, which actually varies in colour or can change its colour, and they turn up reasonably commonly in our surveys. But again, I think they're, I don't know. Do you know the scientific name? Is it found somewhere in there, Ben?
I think is it Hippolyte varians? Is it that one?
You're absolutely right, Jamie. I'm glad you said that because I couldn't think of it. Have we even got it there?
It is there. It's next to Gammus lacosta.
Oh, I see it. Yeah.
Cydia longicornis.
Pretty much middle of the road.
Middle of the road. Okay, fair enough. Yeah. So it's one of the rarest species, but it's out there.
Mm.
Cool. Can you go to the next slide, please? Okay. So this is the accumulation graph of all the species we found. So we found 40 in total. You'll note that 15 of those were found in the very first survey. So it's very easy for people to go out and find the most common species. But as we've done more and more surveys, the number of new species we're adding to the total number is decreasing. we're kind of getting to the point now where we're expecting this to level off. So when the actual new novel species is found, we don't know. You can do some data analysis to sort of predict this curve leveling off in the future. So potentially looking at finding in total 43, 44 species, but that can shift quite drastically if we go to a new site with different habitats or different climates. And one thing we're looking to do in the future is actually compare these accumulation curves between sites. So a site that's very poor richness will actually have a lower total species you'll be able to find, so it has a slower, a less steep curve up to that lower species richness of the whole site, and that might be what we analyse for the next meeting. Hopefully, if we've got enough data. Again, as Ben said, we're kind of still trying to accumulate enough surveys at the same repeated at the same sites to do this comparison between sites and between tides and between people. Cool. Go to the next slide, please, Jamie. Cool. So the little exciting bit of analysis we did this month was looking at the weather. So when people conduct our surveys, we asked them just to say what was the weather like, and that's sunny spells, overcast or rainy. Reason I started looking at this is because I was spring was in the air a week ago. It seems to have gone away the last few days, but it did feel as summer was on its way. And there's a potential that now we're getting into sunny, warmer weather, and there's going to be more opportunities doing sunnier surveys, opposed to January when about, I think, nearly 50% of people did a survey in the rain. However, there is one caveat to this. Who here has done a survey in the rain? Ben's asking. Who's gone out and done a rainy survey? Sal's got a hand up. Ian's got his hand up.
Done one or two.
One or two, yeah. I'm not sure if I've done actually. Maybe I'm a fair weather rock pooler. I should get out there. So the interesting thing is, if you go on to the next slide, Jamie.
Yep. On laptop, there you go.
We've actually found that overall, for all the rainy surveys that have been conducted, they've actually found a significantly higher number of species than the sunny surveys. And this is potentially interacting with the tide as well. So even on lower tides, you will find the more species if you go out on a rainy day at a very low tide. This analysis is still caveated in the idea that we want to, first of all, to be able to detect the differences between low tides and or tide heights, and also between sites and between surveys. But if the data continues bearing out like this, it is potentially meaning that if you go out on a sunny on a rainy survey, you're going to find more species of crustaceans. Some further caveats in it that we probably think there's some missing data in this graph. So on the very extreme rainy days where the beast from the east blew in, or the heavy downpours, people probably haven't gone out on those days. And where it says rainy it's probably more towards the drizzly side or the spitting side, and occasionally some rainy surveys. But potentially there's a bias in our data that we don't have extreme levels of precipitation in our data sets. But it's something to bear in mind. There are reasons why you might find more creatures on a rainy day. So, most rock pool creatures want to keep themselves damp and moist. And if it's raining, that means they can come out from underneath their rocks, or they can be less wary of the sun drying them out. So there's a possibility that something's going on here. It's something to watch into the future. I think that's my last slide.
Yes, it is.
I just ran off. I hope this has shown, from the data set that we're gathering, that we are, coming across with interesting results, getting interesting findings, and we are well on our way to using the data that you've provided to answer some interesting questions.
Yeah, that's brilliant, Christoph. Does anyone have any questions regarding our analysis or anything we're doing with the data so far?
So, could it be that people have been getting better and the weather has been getting worse? That is actually interesting. If we did it multiple years and actually found that over time people are getting better. My other hunch is that potentially the people who are the most enthusiastic rock pours are the people who are going out when it's rainy. But that might not be the case. That's something we need to delve into to look at for each specific surveyor. How much variation is caused there. So ideally we get different people going to the same site and seeing how much variation there is, or if there's consistent variation between different rock pools.
Right, well, I guess that's something we'll look into in the future with our analysis, trying to figure out if we do get multiple years worth of data. That'd be very interesting to dig into. Does anybody have anything else they want to add to the biodiversity analysis? Any questions? If not, then the next part is to look at verification.
I was going to say, is if anyone's got any specific questions they'd like us to look at with the data, that'd be something we'd be very happy to do. So so send me an email or bring it up now if you do.
Yeah, feel free if anyone's got any suggestions for what we can do with the data. I'll take that silence as a no. No one's thought of anything right now. So I guess moving on to the verification side of things, I went and verified all the surveys that have been uploaded through February and March, and to be honest, there haven't really been any issues with photos or anything in particular which has stood out to me that is a major issue in terms of people misidentifying anything or adding photos which is really hard to identify. So I think there was just a couple of instances which I'll just talk about now. Essentially with barnacles, still get occasionally photos like you see on the left where it's a bit zoomed out, it's a bit out of focus. It makes it a little bit difficult to see all of the barnacle species in the photos. I think this particular photo is also listed as Cathamulus stellatus when it's actually Cathamulus montaguei. So for anyone who is struggling with any barnacle ID, I would refer you to the YouTube video on the Rockpool Project's YouTube account by Mike Paulston, who unfortunately couldn't be here today. He did apologize. He has another meeting. And also there's a slightly more abridged look at that video on the blogs done by Laura. So if anyone wants to get any tips on barnacle identification, that's your best place to stop off. But in terms of getting good photos of barnacles, I've personally found the easiest way is if you're using a camera phone, getting down on your hands and knees and just putting the phone up as close as you can to the barnacles and looking through a hand lens through the camera. That produces a photo kind of like what you see on the right. That is a little bit easier when it comes to verification for getting a nice clear image of the operculum and some of the plates around the side if they haven't been eroded away. So that is probably my main advice for anybody who's looking at photographing barnacles and uploading them for the survey. And Ben's wondering about hand lenses that are easy or cheap to get hold of. I have had my hand lens for so long I don't remember how much it cost. I don't think it was particularly expensive. But
I recently got my hand lens after Jamie had advised me getting one, and it was only, I think the one I got was like a tenner off of Amazon, and it was very easy to find. So yeah, it is.
Oh, thanks for that, Freya. Yeah, so some relatively cheap investments. A jeweler's lens, if you have one for looking at like the silver hallmarks on rings or anything like that, that will also suffice quite nicely. It doesn't have to be a particularly high magnification. 5 to 10 times is probably more than enough. I'm not sure what my one is. Mine might be 15 or 18 times or something. But yeah, so for barnacle identification, this is quite an effective way. If you have an actual, like a proper camera, then I don't use one personally, so I don't know if anyone else on the project who uses one might have some advice for that, for using something like an Olympus camera.
So we've got some for the project, and they are brilliant, but they're not cheap. They're about £300. We just recently were lucky enough to be given some new cameras. The Plymouth team have got them. Jack, can you remind me what they are? They're Fujifilm, aren't they?
Yeah, I think they're Fujifilm like XP.
And
They're
we had a go
pretty
at them, didn't we, when we up at Mountbatten? They seemed pretty good.
Yeah, I had one of the older models of it, and it's pretty good. As long as you wash it after it gets salt water on it, it's pretty good.
And it doesn't have a specific macro function, but it still seems to be doing the job.
Yeah, it seems.
Maybe it does. I couldn't find it. And I think they're about half the price, so about £150.
Fantastic. So yeah, if anybody's looking to get a camera that's decent for photography, then they seem to be like decent models.
There's another option that I've never heard of anyone trying, but I've just noticed is you can get these things for mobile phones, like attachments that you can put over the lens for macro pictures, and you can get like fisheye lenses and stuff, which like they're like a set for them is like under £30, I think, maybe even less than 20. Whether they're any good or not, I don't know.
Yeah, I've heard of those things for macro photography. I've never tried them myself, but I've heard they can be pretty decent for particularly since you're saving so much money and using a phone. Apparently the photos they can come up with are quite good. So
I've tried a few for insects.
Oh yeah.
A lot of the picture around is black. It makes the actual image way smaller. I wouldn't recommend spending too much money.
On the mobile phone accessories?
Yeah, on the ones that you clip on to the front.
Right, that's handy, thank you.
That's nice to know, thank you, yeah. So I'm going to move on from barnacles. If nobody has any questions about barnacle photography or verification, then there is just my favourite topic to talk about, to be, if my laptop wants to load, the amphipods. So I've been very happy to see there's been a lot more amphipod records coming in through the Rockpool project and the most recent surveys. It's always fun to dig out the books and the photos that I have as reference to see if there's any amphipod species that can be verified. The answer is almost always no. Cannot see what the species is. So I just wanted to cover a bit about what I had in the last report, which is I dropped these two diagrams to show just the complexity of the form of an amphipod in general. Don't worry that I've shorthanded all the labeling, because that's not really important. What's important to note is that virtually everything I've labeled on here is an important identification feature and normally needs to be looked at in tandem with a bunch of others. So you wouldn't just look at, say, the eye or the ocelli, which is the OC. You'd also look at that in terms of, you look at that as well as the gnathopod, which is GNP, and then the dactylus, and possibly whether there's any hairs on the gnathopod or whether the dactylus is as long as the the propodus segment of the gnathopod, and all these individual things coming up with amphipods, which make them very, very tricky to identify. On top of that, unlike most other UK rockpool species, there's around 400 amphipod species to sift through. So in general, in terms of identifying a species, not to be discouraging, but it is very, very difficult without the use of either a high-powered macro lens on a very good photography camera or a microscope, because the level of detail you need to get, and the amphipods themselves aren't often particularly willing participants in photography. They tend to just want to wriggle around on whatever it is that they're on to get away from the light. So in general, we've had lots of records, and I haven't been able to verify a lot of them as any species suggestions they've been uploaded with. So I just want to make sure everyone knows I'm exercising caution in terms of anything I put through. There are a couple of distinct species, like the Jassa species, where they have feathery antennae, and scythe-like dactylus, which are very, very long, along with their actual nattopods, also very, very long. So there's a couple of species that you can see might have some interesting distinguishing features, but for the most part, and this isn't to say don't record them, but for the most part they are very difficult to ID, and I wouldn't expect at the moment for them to be ID2 species, which is fine. We're still trying to figure out with the project what we can do, with the amphipod data to see if there's anything that we can do, and having the photos records there makes it easier if we want to go back and try and ID them if we have some additional resources or additional experience in identifying them. So try to take as close up a photo of you as you can, and try to include as much of these features that have been pointed to in high detail as you can. I think the really key ones are the nathopods, the eyes, the antennae. Sometimes the proportion length, like the actual length of the antennae and how that comes into like the body proportion, can be important. So if you can get the full length of the antennae, and that's handy. And I think the telson is really hard to photograph, but that is an important feature. The telson is the very tip of the abdomen, and because they curl their abdomens up underneath them, it's normally not on display. You normally can't get access to it to photograph. But if you can, that can be, the shape of the telson could be a telltale indicator of genus or species. And I think that's really all I need to say on amphipods. So if anybody has any questions or any comments about them.
Jamie, can I just... Sorry, I don't know if that's...
I think you're cutting out, sorry. Could you repeat what you said?
No, Jamie, it's just with the crustacean surveys, what's most useful for you when we go out? Is it just to find an amphipod and take a photo, or is it helpful for us to take different photos if we can, despite them leaping about?
If you're able to take different photos of individuals, because they often appear in assemblages which are mixed species. There's a lot of research, a lot of papers you'll find that have like analysed the assemblages of amphipods. They tend to just congregate in large numbers of species. So the likelihood is if you find a group of them, there may be 2 or 3 or 4 or more species hiding within that. So taking lots of photos, whilst I think that's a good idea. I don't know, Ben, how you'd feel about that in terms of the server and the space we have for storing such photos.
No problem. I guess the only thing I would... I'm going to get a bit of feedback, but I think that this is going to be an ongoing thing, and we want to try and get on top of amphipods as best we can. And it might be a while before we have a fresh look at all these images that have been sent in the past, but we will do that when we feel like we're better with amphipods, basically. So yeah, it's well worth sending multiple pictures in.
So far, what we're doing, because we can't put amphipods for everyone, is just giving them different names, because they're clearly different ones, and giving it our best guess, because you can't just put amphipods on everything, because it'll only let you do one, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's, I should know the answer to that because I wrote the program, but I can't. But if you put amphipods for at least one, and then write unknown for the rest, and then they'll be recorded as multiple different unknowns, potentially different species. So yeah, but unknown is fine.
Thank you.
Yep.
I was going to say, a quick note is that I think you can normally tell when 2 amphipods are different species, caveated by there are some that look very, very similar. But you can still be reasonably sure, like, okay, these definitely look anatomically different, but you're still unable to like say which either of the species are. And that's probably a good way to say you definitely want to upload those photos, or the 2 distinct what you are guessing that are species.
That's true. Yeah, that one. Yeah, that's very true. They can be very distinct between species, particularly if they're different genus. So if you see something that's got maybe the first set of antennae is really long and the second set's quite short, like in the picture on the right, and then you see another one where they've got long pairs of both antennae, then that would indicate that different species. Or do be wary, they can have sexual dimorphism, although that just muddies things a bit, so I wouldn't worry about that. But yeah, that's something that we'll have to figure out.
So if they look different, take more than one picture.
That's it, yeah.
Darren, I remember you had quite a useful receptacle for taking pictures of amphipod when we did a survey at Trefusis Point.
Like little baking ramekins, white ramekins dishes. They're really quite good for taking photos of them rather than the see-through or plastic containers. So like you see in the photo on the right-hand side, it gives it sort of a white background. So if you've got a good macro on your camera, you can get quite good photos. But the biggest problem is to try and keep them still. So another little trick is just put a very small amount of water in, tip the dish a little bit, and they'll stay in the tiny watered area rather than going out of that little area. So that way you can pin them into a little bit of a corner and try and get your photos that way.
That's some good advice. Yeah, they can very much get stuck to the sides of things on the water tension. So that's a good way to keep them still for a bit. And yeah, having a nice background, whether it's a white background like in the dish or a dark background, having a nice background is quite handy for making the features pop out a little bit more. So yeah, in terms of verification, that's basically it. Just want to make sure everybody understands just how complicated the side of amphipods is. And I think next, Ben, you wanted to talk a little bit about getting involved in the project or in crustacean surveying in general.
Yeah, so just to finish off, just to mention to anybody who's brand new, who hasn't already been doing surveys, I think those of you who have probably up to speed for how it all works now, but just to explain a little bit about it. Next slide, please, Jamie. It's not the next slide, it's the next thingy. So survey periods, we have them once a month with the new moon, starting tomorrow for this month. You do them in pairs, okay? So find a partner. If you haven't got a partner in your local area, see if you're in one of our regions. We have our regional organisers here today, nearly all of them, don't we? So we've got Freya from Bude, and we've got Anna from Falmouth,
yep.
Jack from Plymouth, Bill, our new survey organiser for Pembrokeshire. Hi, Bill.
No.
And we've got Sally and Kath, of course, down in Penzance. So if you live in any of those areas, these guys are the local experts and they can help you out. And if you haven't got a partner, they might be able to hook you up with someone else. But if you're not, then just contact us at citizenscience@therockpoolproject.co.uk and we'll help you out. Survey sites. So we've got the survey sites all listed on our citizen science section of our webpage. We've got lots of them, and we're always willing to set up new sites if you've got a favourite spot that's not listed there. It's a bit of an involved process setting up, but we just need you to tell you whereabouts it is, and then we'll do the rest at our end, and then it'll be available for you to submit. Next one, please, Jamie. And then, yeah, you just get out and rock pool. So don't feel, especially after Jamie so delicately introduced us to the intricacies of amphipods, and we didn't even talk about barnacles, did we? Not very much anyway. It can seem a little bit off-putting, but do not be put off by the scariness of some of these ID problems. The only way to really get to know them is to get out there, and rock pooling is the gift that keeps giving. And definitely, I find I really enjoy these crustacean surveys as well. I think that we've fulfilled our remit of getting something that's interesting to keep going back again and doing. So yeah, don't be frightened to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Beg your pardon?
I was saying, yeah, just to echo that, don't be put off by anything I've said to do with amphipods, because there's far more interesting things you'll find in the rock pools as well while you're surveying for crustaceans, and they're the real reason to go out. And a big Montague's crab.
Thank you, Jamie. And so upload the results. All the there's resources on our citizen science section of the website to explain how to do the surveys, how to upload the results. If you have any trouble with any of that, then feel free to get in contact with us, and we're always keen to help you out. So yeah, please do help us out. We're trying to cover the same sites every month and to get as many surveys done at those sites as possible. So we will try and coordinate that, but we'll let you know which ones we're looking for. Oh yes, and so this is the first of our regular monthly public meetings. As I mentioned, we're going to be alternating them between having external speakers and doing these citizen science forums. And next month, on the 15th of May, sorry, 5th of May, we've got Christine Magg. So I met Christine. So Christine is one of the 4 authors on this book here, which is, if ever you're interested in seaweeds, and they are a very interesting group that we've shamelessly overlooked really in quite a lot in the Rockpool project, but they are amazing seaweeds. Your normal guidebooks aren't that great for the sort of catch-all guidebooks. They're okay for some of the common species, but if you get anything unusual, they can be not that great. So this is the book to go for, the Seaweeds of Britain and Ireland, the Sea Search book. And then, so the 4 people that were the authors in this book, so that's Frances Bunker, Juliet Brodie, who's at the Natural History Museum, and Bunker, and Christine Maggs, who's the Vice Dean at Bournemouth University. They're really like the authorities on seaweed for the whole country. And when I was working at the Marine Biological Association in Plymouth, I was lucky enough to get a chance to go to their 3 days at seaweed course, which the 4 of them ran. So I got the chance to meet Christine then, and I found her talks fascinating. Her research covers all sorts of different interesting aspects of seaweed evolution and taxonomy. So I'm sure she'll give a great talk. And she's also the chief scientist of JNCC, the Joint Nature Conservation Committee, which I didn't appreciate at the time. So she may well have some interesting conservation angles to discuss as well. So it's really brilliant that we've got Christine giving our first external talk. And we've got other ones that we're trying to nail down for the months following that. So, and we'll be doing. Hello.
Do we have a time for the talk for Christine Meggs? Is it the same time as this?
Correct.
So
these online sessions will be first Wednesday of the month at 7 p.m. From now on. And yes, so in 2 months' time, we'll be joining again to have a look at the data that we've collected between now and then, and to see how things are turning out.
That's it. If anybody wants to know anything in the meantime, feel free to get in contact. I think the email is citizenscience@therockpoolproject.co.uk. So if you want to know anything about the data or what we're doing, then you can always feel free to come and contact us. More than happy to talk. I think that's 8 o'clock now. I think that's everything we wanted to cover, isn't it?
I think so. But if anyone's got any questions, please feel free to ask any of us.
Yeah. Any questions on anything we've covered so far?
Okay, I was going to chat to you, Freya, because I haven't got back to your email. Sorry about that, I've just been crazy busy. But I thought I might mention it now if that's okay with you, because it might be of interest to other people. So, Freya, you were asking about your boss. Which hotel is it? Is it a hotel?
Yeah, it's the Beach Hotel at Bude.
Bude, okay, cool. Might be interested in promoting the Rockpool project, and for those of you who don't know, we as well as doing the citizen science projects, we do our ecotourism. So we run Rockpool safaris for tourists, and that's it's a great thing to do, and it's also something that helps support our citizen science and our community work. So yeah, it's brilliant. Thanks very much for looking into that. We have a lot of leaflets that we produced last year, and so I'd be happy to send them over to you. The other thing to mention is that we started last year doing a thing where we could offer people a 10% discount, and if a business was willing to sort of promote that for us, then we'd give them 5% as well to sort of incentivize them to really actually push them out there. So if your boss is interested in that, and if anybody else knows of any businesses that are down here in Cornwall and in Plymouth as well, because we're looking to set up there, please do let me know, and we'll look to get that set up again this year, because it's something that's we haven't really done since we first started last year.
Oh, definitely. Thank you. Cool.
No, thank you.
Right, yeah. So I think that is us. Unless anybody has any last minute questions or anything they want to add, I suppose thank you all for coming, for listening to us rattle on about crustaceans for an hour.
Cool. Thank you very much, Jamie.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jamie.
Thank
Oh, you're
you.
welcome.
Excellent sharing.
Thanks. Yeah, very interesting.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Yeah,
Cheers.
thanks.
Good to see everyone. Thank you.
Cheers, everyone. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
See you guys.
Thanks. Bye.
Right, I'll end the meeting. See you later.